Hey everyone, this is Matt with Learn Everything About Design, and in today's video, we're going to add to our Fusion Mastery series, and we're going to talk a little bit about soft modification. And so if you want to follow along, you can go to the description of the video and download this data set. It's fairly simple, straightforward. What we're going to be doing is talking about how we can use soft modification to make gradual changes to a design. Now, this is something that came up. I was helping somebody out recently with a propeller, and they were looking at ways in which they can make some very basic changes or small changes to a part, similar to how you would, let's say, hit the edge of a blade with a hammer. It's not going to make an immediate difference in one specific location, but it's going to transfer that deformation across a larger area. And so what we're going to do today is explore soft modification and see how we can make that happen for us. The first thing that I want to do is I'm going to leave the body one shown. Now, typically when we go into forms, I turn this off because it's more of a distraction. But in this case, it's actually going to help us see what we're changing and how drastic that changes. And so then we're going to go into our freeform feature and right click and select edit, or double click on it as well. All right, so you can see here that we've got a blade, and that blade is a freeform body. It gets thickened and then it gets trimmed back to the appropriate size. And so when we try to come in and make a change to, let's say, this upper corner, if I just select it and I use edit form and I pull this in, you can see that it's making a drastic change in that one location. So we're going to do Control Z to undo. And what we want to do instead is make a more gradual change. And we can do that by enabling soft modification. Now with soft modification, we have three main options. We have a distance option, which is looking at a selection, whether it's a vertex or a face or an edge, and it's going to go out in this sort of circular pattern from there. Any of the darker colored vertices are going to have more of an impact, meaning they're going to move more. As they get lighter, all the way down to white, then they're going to have less and less of an impact or less move, in this case, if we're going to transform them. Notice also there is a transition. You can have it be a smooth transition, a linear, meaning that it's going to be essentially straight distance from this one to this one. And then we also have a bulge, which means that it's going to basically fall off quicker toward the end. There's also some weighting options that we can take a look at. And so that extent option can also be a face count option, or it can be a rectangular face count option, meaning that we can add more in a single direction and less in another direction. This can be helpful if we want to, say, for example, make a change gradually along the top edge here. What we can do is we can increase the influence that we have all the way across the top, and we can reduce the influence that we have vertically. And so you can see here we can have it fall off. Now, as you play around with these fall off options, you'll notice that we get essentially a very similar color transition from start to end. Here you can see that the red is darker here. It's more pink in the middle and white at the end. And then the bulge one is going to push that transition further out and then quickly fall off near the edge. And so you're going to have to play around with each of these and see what they do. As we increase the weight, what that's going to do is it's going to push the influence further down. As we decrease it, it will reduce that, meaning the white areas are going to move less. And if we set this back to 0, that'll be just sort of in the middle based on which transition you have. All right, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at this in practice. Let's go to the top. We're going to stick with this rectangular face count. I've got 23 faces in one direction and 2. And then we're just going to simply move it. And what you're going to see here is that it's moving it gradually. As sort of the transition, it's moving gradually to almost nothing happening near the hub. And you can move it a lot more, and you can kind of get a feel for that. You can kind of see what's happening here. Now I'm going to hit Control Z to put it back, and I'm going to change my extent type to be this more circular, and I'm going to increase the number of faces. So we're going to sort of have that grow. This is more in line with what would happen if you, say, hit the corner of that with a hammer. And so what this means is right at the point where you impact, where you're pushing, you're going to see the most amount of deformation, and then it's going to gradually transition away. Now, this is not a perfect solution to every problem, but it does allow you the ability to make gradual changes to a design rather than localized changes. And so we're going to extend this out. Let's hit plus and just extend it out a bit more. And then as we pull it, you can see we're maintaining a very similar shape. We're just making a gradual change. One other thing I'll mention is that, again, soft modification is not right for every scenario. There are other tools that we can use. For example, we can reset our pivot point And then once our pivot point is reset at the center, we can use tools like rotate, which will allow us to rotate an entire edge or scale an entire edge if we want to make some changes. And these sort of global changes to our freeform model can also be extremely beneficial. Now I'm going to do Control Z and undo that to get back to our soft modification style. Now again, it's not perfect, but a lot of times when you look at things like impeller blades or turbines or compressor wheels, they will have some variable geometry to them based on their performance characteristics, whether it's an RPM limit for cavitation or whether it's going to be the way in which it interacts inside of an additional housing. So for example, if there's a cutaway here, you may notice a slight difference in the shape of the blade at that point based on, again, its performance, the way the fluid that it's moving or compressing, if it's air it's compressing, or if it's moving, let's say, coolant in a cooling system. These are going to have different performance gains or impacts based on those shapes. Now for us, what I'm going to do with just that simple change is I'm going to finish the form. This is going to go back to our design workspace. It's going to thicken that blade, and then it's going to go through all the rest of the features that we have here. And so you can see it did make a change to the design just by making that adjustment. You can always go back into the freeform tools and make manual adjustments. Let's go back here. We'll turn on soft modification. I'm going to go back to that rectangular one, and we're going to increase it in this direction. And I'm going to sort of pull this back so there's this little bit of a hook in the shape. We'll say OK. We'll finish the form. We'll allow it to regenerate. Again, it's got to go through the process of thickening. You can see we've got that little bit of a hook, that step in the form. And because it was trimmed away, it's not nearly as drastic as where we actually adjusted it, but you can see that there is very clearly a change there. Now, just to play around and practice, let's do this one more time. I'm going to come in and I'm going to make some adjustments. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to Modify, and I'm going to select a vertex and enable soft modification. I'm going to pull this one in. Now this is a very horrible blade. This is not going to be very efficient, but the point of it is for us to practice and play around with this and make some adjustments and see how those adjustments progress through our design. So obviously this is not something that we would use in practice, or at least I wouldn't think so. I've never seen a blade like this before. But it just gives you the idea that we can quickly make adjustments or modifications to the shape using tools like soft modification. That way we're not creating those drastic hard changes from a single vertex to the next, but we're creating more global changes using soft modification to create unique designs quickly and easily. Now, if we were doing this with traditional means like lofts from different spline profiles, then obviously we have to go back to each sketch profile, make those changes, and then update them. Where here with freeform modeling, if I'm really not happy with this, I can always go back and try to smooth it out by doing things like deleting edges. I can take this entire edge here, and I'm going to go to a top view, and I'm going to reset my pivot point to the center here, and then scale things back and try to smooth it out. We can also use additional tools like flatten. So with flatten, what we can do is we can make some selections and we can try to flatten vertices back to a specific plane. Go ahead and start to select more. And the more we select, the further back they go, it'll start to gradually pull all those to make a flattened state. Not a perfect solution again, but there are ways that we can do this. And we can always go back and do things like completely delete edges. Let's delete those until we're happy with the selection we have. And then I can just pull this one up, reset my pivot point, and make another rotation to get back more to that original shape. We'll finish the form. And one of the main benefits here is because the freeform model is essentially converting to a surface. That surface is getting thickened, and then it's getting trimmed, and all the additional features are getting added to it. Fusion doesn't really care if we delete edges or extend edges, make it bigger or smaller, because at the end of the day, when you finish the form, it's converting back to that surface. And so as long as we don't go from, let's say, one surface to two, and then it's confused about which one to thicken, it will still allow us to go back to those simplified versions where we have reduced edges and we can play around with them a bit easier. So This is, again, this is just a simple use case for playing around with soft modification and playing around with just freeform in general. Go ahead and play around with this, make some changes and adjustments. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.